So, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Playful Life podcast, where we look at different takes on bringing more playfulness into our lives. And today we have with us Alexander Barker, who is part of this great project, which is called Be More Pirate. And I don't know, if you think about pirates, all sorts of things come to mind. You might think of when you used to play the pirate when you were a kid. They're great fantasy elements. They're very colourful figures. There's a lot of imaginary role playing that we can do with pirates. And but what I particularly liked about this Be More Pirate is this actually even just the name of the book, Be More Pirate. It's like you're not pirate enough, so get more of that in you. And it's one of these phrases which comes to you, and you have to stop and think a second. It's like, what does that mean? Oh, yes, it's like I've been tripped up with all the things I have to do in my life, and I'm just like being washed over by things that don't necessarily represent me or are useful to me anymore. And so, pirate is about freedom, as well as also our work on playfulness is around freedom. So, Alexandra, welcome on the podcast, talking about play and pirates and all sorts of things.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So Alexandra is an author and a coach, and I think she has a very good way with her words, and she knows how to inspire people and get the best out of her. And she's working with with teams. They get. I imagine you get all sorts of like particular requests, with your project, because it has a very clear identity to it, the Be More Pirate, and you've come up with a very good training scheme. Let's just jump in that straight away. What is Be More Pirate all about?
Yeah. So I'll come back to the original story. But in its current form, Be More Pirate is, of course, a book. It was written by my business partner, Sam. Business partner is probably a bit formal for our relationship. He's sort of my co-pirate. And we have evolved the book over the last sort of 6 years or so into something that is a bit like a social movement. I like to think of it as a community of people who want to challenge the status quo, who can come to us and the network for support and inspiration. But I do, as you said, deliver training, experiences, let's call it, workshops for teams in all kinds of industries and sectors to help them rewrite their rules. That's how we describe it. So it's the recognition that the rules that maybe we've been following for a while no longer serve us. And this covers a lot of ground. So I never enforce on them what kind of rules we're talking about. I let them find that freedom and agency to choose what rules do they think need rewriting. And it's a lot of fun, and there's lots of randomness that comes into this. Lots of as you said, like different projects and people who come into our sphere, and I try to keep that unpredictability in it as well. So, and I do some coaching and some and lots of public speaking as well, because storytelling is such a huge part of the pirate history and also how you can have impact in the world. And I mean, I'll share a little bit
Yeah,
about
please.
the original pirate story, because that's where it all obviously came from. And I think it was funny what you said at the beginning around where pirates sit in our cultural imagination, because guaranteed the only time you're going to let your kid go to a party dressed as a murderous lying thief is when they're a pirate. It's the and this is a very interesting space that pirates occupy. They've been turned into these kind of camp pantomime villains by Walt Disney, when actually the truth is a lot more inspiring than that. The true story of piracy and what it represented is what's captured in the book in Be More Pirate. And I think Sam writes about it in a really unique way. It's funny, it's irreverent, but it also talks about this, the serious underlying message that this was the work, the golden age of piracy, which was in the 30 years in the 1600s, represented the world's biggest workplace rebellion. And a lot of what they were trying to change and stand for is still happening today. So the pirates, these sailors in the Navy who were rebelling against the way that the Navy was running, that they had high death rates, they had no guarantee of pay. They were essentially out doing the bidding of the establishment, and not really seeing the rewards. They decided that they could rewrite the rules for themselves, create a different way of living and working together. And they, instigated democracy, like an equal say in equal decision making, equal pay structures, so flat, fair pay, which again we don't have today. There was real diversity. Female pirates. There was lots of black pirates. So what kind of gets left out of the typical story? They were incredibly inclusive. They had a social insurance system. They had same-sex marriage. So loads of really progressive, incredible ideas. They deserve the title of social revolutionaries, as well as, the suffragettes, the civil rights movement, all these other movements that we hold up as kind of bastions of morality. We think that pirates also should sit there. And some of the violence that we associate with pirates is incredibly overblown. And there's a reason for that. So
it was also a very violent time.
yeah, right. So it's all historically contextual. The public hangings were entertainment in the 1600s, to put it. So, what you might, a pirate shooting down a Navy ship was sort of the equivalent of like going to the movies in some respects. Not that it's in any way justified per se, but I think actually pirates were trying to avoid violence because their main incentive was to just try and survive. And the more they got into battle, the less likely they were to survive or take down the Navy. So they would deliberately. I mean, this is where the storytelling part is really interesting, because the reason pirates have this overblown reputation for costumes and the Jolly Roger symbolized surrender or die. It was this fear-based symbol, which was deliberate so that people would be terrified into surrender, so that pirates didn't have to start a fight. Because why would you? They were limited. They were limited in their resources. So it was very strategic and quite clever.
Oh.
So that's
The question is immediately like, so what is it that's well, actually this is like a ridiculous question, because we all see things that don't work in the world, things that we would like to put to mends, or things that jump out as being unjust or not right. And I have this theory. It's not just my own theory, but that what we see is missing in the world is our call to act on it. So the scope is actually huge, because it's like there's so many things right now which aren't working and are wrong, and also, I talk a lot about playfulness, and it's like and it's my it's my life to talk about this, and I think that we are not alive enough in our bodies, but it might sound like ridiculous, this talking about play, when there's so much hurt and so much problems in the world. So I see it as a solution. So how can we empower people through this idea of like being a little bit more pirate? This is a question that I'm going to ask you a second. What does it mean to be a little bit more pirate in your life? We're not talking about we're trying to make a change, right? So we're not going to just like bash things down. It has to be a little bit more intelligent than that. And the thing about the pirates and the book as well, which I really enjoyed, was this this fact that they had all these democracies within them, and that created change. They went out to like change the world. Actually, they were there to make a better world for themselves. That then everybody said, "Oh, that's a really good idea. Let's do that as well." So I said quite a lot there, but there's this thought that about how to go about creating change to adopt these principles in our lives. Let's go straight in there. This is like a nitty-gritty of it, right?
Yeah. No, I think you've hit upon something really important, and I totally understand what you're saying. Quite often when I'm working with groups, whether it's a frustrated group of people in a company saying, you know, our company is not working well, our managers are not listening, or it's a group of activists saying, as you said, like there's some huge things that we need to tackle. I noticed that first of all, people get stuck in what's wrong and what's broken and stay in that headspace, and that's obviously not helpful. And what the pirate idea does is it helps you to move beyond that, I think. Or we say flip your frustration into fuel. If you can't describe what a better alternative is, then you're not really having a pirate rebellion, because the whole point of the pirate rebellion was that not that it was chaotic or destructive, but that it was creative. So it was less about the rules they broke, more about the new ones that they wrote, and always kind of keeping that in mind. And I think there are certain ingredients that help to get you there, particularly in the modern context. This is where the book, you know, in some ways can't completely translate, or the historical stuff can't translate to modern day, because we're facing quite different challenges. And I say that one of the biggest problems that we have now is like the distraction economy, like the fact that our attention is being pulled in so many different directions all the time. The biggest thing I hear from teams, like, and it sounds so basic, first of all, it's like, oh, I'm just overwhelmed by the amount of meetings I have to have, or the amount of stuff in my day and the things I have to think about, care about, and do. And that lack of focus is what creates an inability to like make that change. So the first thing that I think I always think about pirates is they did less. They did more with less. There's a simplicity to pirates, and the agility comes from their simplicity. They actually had less resources than the Navy. And as a pirate, the thinking is don't overcomplicate it. We often refer to something we call small, bold actions, which is, right, you might want to tackle something really big in the world. But what could you do just start by what you can do in the next 2 weeks? Something that is logistically easy, that excites you. That's the key thing. It's got to create momentum. And this is where I think the play stuff comes in, is like, how do we make this fun? How can you make the action that you're going to take fun? And maybe a little bit, it's going to be a little bit scary in that it's probably something out of the norm that you haven't done before. And often like doing something more playful or something more, irreverent or frivolous, like feels
Yeah,
to
there's
people.
a risk. There's a risk factor. And the risk
Yeah,
is
you're like, I'm gonna.
that you're going to die, but the risk is that you don't
It's
know
usually
what to do.
it's usually that you're going to expose yourself. Like
Yeah.
that's the main like risk that people feel, that the feeling of like vulnerability of exposure. And whether it's putting yourself out there, speaking up, talking to somebody new. Like I'm even like, I always say, like, just practice it, like speak to a stranger. I mean, I live in London, no one talks to each other. And if we do, we avoid each other. So what would it do? Like making new connection, explore your world a bit more. And these are just really sort of small, simple things. And I think that when people hear that, initially they think, oh, you know, is this going to make a difference? But I can only say that you have to start with something that small often. When we over strategize and over plan what we want to do and what change we want to make, so often it ends up not happening. It overwhelms us, and then you lose the joy, you lose the fun in any of it. So, and I talk a little bit. So we wrote a second book together, me and Sam, and talk a bit about that in there as well. So
How to be more pirate.
yeah, how to be more pirate. Just because I wanted to like break down some of the more practical aspects of it and what I'd seen work with teams, and the fact that like when you say you want to collaborate with somebody, I've had this so many times. You go into it and people are like, let's do a huge thing together. Like there's obviously synergy in what we're doing, and I'm like, no, let's just do one tiny thing together. Like just show that we just prove that we are able to keep our word on one small thing. And I think that's also a real pirate thing, like keep your word.
Yes.
And part of the personal like empowerment aspect of being pirate is um you know, and the code as well is keeping accountability to other people and keeping accountability to yourself, because so much of what I see breaks culture and breaks trust in organizations is the fact that we're saying one thing and we're doing another. And so even just showing up for yourself and saying, right, I'm going to follow through on this small act of courage, this small, bold action, and show that I am really, really up for making a change. That I'm, and that builds your confidence, it builds your self-esteem, it builds your courage. So that is just a really important part, I think, of being any kind of change maker, activist, anyone who wants to do anything in the world, is recognizing that you build it up from these small things.
Mm.
And I think also, that like I never underestimate the storytelling element of it. That also gets hugely missed in companies, in teams.
Like, you mean like giving context, or what do
I
you mean?
mean, part of creating momentum around a thing is giving it a real sense of purpose, and purpose is usually given to us most effectively through stories.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
You know, not just this is the right thing to do and here's how we're going to execute this plan. That doesn't inspire anyone.
No.
Well, that's maybe a generalization, but generally speaking, if you want to bring new people on board to your cause, which is what the pirates are doing, is like join us, like join this, like you have to make it appealing, and so much of that appeal is um what what is the story of what we're doing here. It's like, I think you've probably heard the
Yeah, I
phrase.
was actually quite shocked just a few years ago. I think it was probably the corporate rebels I was
Yeah.
reading, and they was said something like, I don't know, 80% of businesses don't really have a vision. They don't know what they're doing. It's just all about money, making money, and it's like sounds ridiculous. I'm like, how can that be? It's like, how can you not know where you want to go? It sounds like so basic to me, but I was, yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit naive from certain things, right? But I was like, how can that be?
But I think there's some different problems with that. I agree with them. Either the vision is generic and vague, i.e., somebody at the leadership has gone, we better have a vision.
Yeah, right.
It's something that sounds palatable and within the realm of like our sector or company. That means that most people working for the company don't feel connected to it. Like, I mean, it's different for you and me because we probably work mostly on our own. Like, I create a vision that I'm really connected to, that like motivates me to get up every day.
Mm.
It's hard to do that. It is hard to do that in a company where you've got lots of different people, lots of different perspectives and functions. But I think so. I'm more on board with like a team doing it for themselves. So like we work with smaller teams, like create your own pirate code, your own vision about who you are, your identity, and one that feels like genuinely um, meaningful to you. So yeah, it's definitely the case that people are disconnected from that story, and the stories that we have are tend to be bland and vague.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We don't do any favors for ourselves with the language we use. It's all a bit flat. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So I'm quite interested. I think it's quite interesting to um so the pirate code, like, I mean, I can imagine it came through a necessity to write down this code. And so what was, I mean, I know there's lots of different codes actually probably out there, but let's just have a quick dive into code, into like code, and then like writing your own code. All right.
yeah,
What does that look like?
yeah. I think writing a code is one of the only times I've created a kind of framework for people to to follow, because I've noticed over the years like how it goes. So the original codes, the pirate codes, there's actually only really one pirate code, because everybody once the ideas that were most appealing to people sort of got around, all the pirate crews basically followed and copied the same code, because it was pretty much democracy, equality of pay, um, and yeah, the sort of social insurance system that they had. And now and again, you'd see a few different ideas creeping in. Like there's one that says, I think this is in Be More Pirate. He's like, the band may only play on Sunday. There was something in another person's code that was about like not allowing anyone to smoke near the gun deck, which makes sense. Very operational elements. One that was around not allowing the crew to harass women, which I thought was interesting. So some different
Yeah,
rules.
they get killed or something, you know, by punished by death if you harass a woman.
Yeah, if you violated the code, it was punishable by death or being marooned. I'd imagine that they responded to their circumstances. So as soon as that problem came up, you'd add in a rule that helped you to mitigate that risk, which makes a lot of sense. So and then if you were caught with a pirate code on, you'd get hanged. So people had to
Yeah,
know.
more putting like treasure in your pockets, like things like this.
Yeah, they
You
were
get away
looking
with
for.
a ruby or something.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think that in the, you know, operationally and historically, the code was incredibly helpful. And I think the biggest point to note about it for me was that everybody voted on the rules. So it was a different way of making the rules. It was not, it was voluntary, right? You're volunteering and opting into these rules and creating them with the crew together, as opposed to having the captain sort of say, here are the rules, like it or leave it. The captain didn't actually have as much say as had as equal say to everybody else. So they weren't, you know, they weren't a dictator in any way. Today, people have, you know, obviously interpreted how to build a pirate code. We have different, you know, we have different kinds of rules that we typically use in organizations. Organizations tend to use, you know, a set of policies, which are very instructive. Or then we have a set of values as well, right? So here are our principles, here's what we stand for. And a code's kind of somewhere between those two things. So, you know, I don't believe it's enough to just have principles. I think, you know, especially when those principles are again vague, like you know, we stand for creativity. We stand for, like, I've heard play come up a lot. We're all about fun and play. So I challenge them to say, okay, then tell me all the ways in which this behavior, this principle shows up in your daily work, your daily life. Show me how you're playful, like quite specifically.
Yeah, no, excellent.
And then, you know, very often either they can't, or, you know, it varies a lot across a company or a team. And so I'm like, well, if you're not able to show how it's put into practice, then it's a bit meaningless. Like it's not really there. And that's okay. You could aspire to have it, but let's be real. Like, let's make this code like operational. And that sounds like a sort of technical way of saying it, but like what I mean is make it real.
Yeah.
You don't make it real, again, you just get this huge trust gap that comes up where people go, oh, you're saying we're like this, but we're not actually. Like what I experience day to day isn't fun, isn't creative, isn't entrepreneurial, all these nice things. It's hard, it's restrictive, it's, you know, I don't know, just the opposite of what we're
Yeah,
saying.
no, exactly. This is an interesting part. So yeah, there are definitely things that kill our sense of play at work. Let's say, like I don't know, unreasonable deadlines, people
Yeah.
controlling your every move. Um, I don't know, stressing you if you've done your work yet. Or I don't know. There's all these kind of ways that yeah, you just want to shout, you know, or I think it also just like not being seen as a human, you know, just
Yeah.
like not being seen as like, um, what was it? This is something that this recognition of like of actually recognizing somebody's qualities. It's happened so rarely. Say, oh, I just really appreciate this in you, and let's get you to do more of that. Not
Yeah.
this. Like really finding out what people's. I do work with people where we go through their play personalities. There are 8 or 9. I prefer 9 play personalities, and
Mm.
it's a very direct way of seeing immediately where you are aligned. You know, I'll just go through them a second because it's interesting, right? So we have the first one is the Joker, which we think of a play personality. You know, it's like it's the fun of the party, and then we have the kinesthete or the mover. So people that need to move to think. They're not
Mm.
perhaps not people that need to be behind their desks. Like they perhaps need a standing desk at least, or
Yeah.
they need to be a bit more mobile. And we know that if this is part of us, and it's not just like like an uneasiness, because it's when we were younger, we used to like to move, we used to like to do more physical things. Yeah,
Mm.
um, yeah, it's like some people don't have learning. There's this Ken Robinson. No, your daughter doesn't have a learning problem. She's a dancer, for example. And then um, and then we have the explorer play type, which is, we could think of that as a pirate a little bit. You know, he likes to go out and find new things, but it's also discovering new things about ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, and explorer type, and then we have the collectionist, people that collect things. They
Mhm.
could be, and all of these have a negative side of them when they're not actually done with the sense of joy or
Mm.
play. You know, if a collect, it's good to collect things. You know, but if it's like filling your whole house and stuff, there's an issue, right?
Mm.
Um, and then we have the competitor that nobody actually admits to being competitive. They're like, no, no, me, I'm not competitive. No, no. But it's in a playful way, it's cool, you know, it helps growth. It's like, oh yeah, I could do this, yeah, I could do this. And there
Mm.
are people that are naturally more competitive. And if we direct them in that sense, that they're bringing
Mm.
out that sort of healthy um, competition, then
Mm.
they're not going to be like, if unless I win, I'm not going to be happy, you know, which is like the
Yeah.
unwritten rule in that.
Yeah.
And then we have the director, which also has a shadow side, obviously. Um, and then we have artist, creative, performer, and storyteller. So storyteller is also somebody who likes words, playing with words, writing, maybe. So if we understand, orientate ourselves on these characters, and perhaps even two or three of them were more present when we were growing up. Maybe more of them are now. Maybe they're the same one. If we completely distance ourselves from that, then we're not going to be in our right um, ambience. No?
Mm.
And,
Mhm.
so why do I say this? To come back to this of like honing on people's talents, spending time to understand what it is that somebody's bringing into a group,
Yeah.
and and giving it more space. And I wonder why that doesn't happen. Why do you think that doesn't happen?
Why don't we get the space to be more individualized?
Or why isn't it that there's any importance on like really, or perhaps there is, perhaps I'm wrong, eh? Why is there less importance on discovering, um, you know, for example, I'm pretty divergent, so I'd be much better on like a brainstorming team than somebody who's actually converging ideas. You know, you know, it's just how I'm made up, for example, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with people about this week actually.
Oh,
It's what I feel like in Be More Pirate, we term it like finding your own compass, and as opposed to following someone else's map. And I think that, you know, the origins of this, right, are from the way that, if we're good, I mean, I know I take most things into like the workplace context because that's generally speaking, where we work most and also where I see the most misery. But
yes,
I
no,
think,
absolutely, it's a horrible place.
yeah, so I think what you know, it's all just legacy. When we say about rewriting the rules, we're still following rules that were created in a different era for a different purpose. We're following Industrial Revolution rules. All of our institutions are set up to prepare people for that kind of workplace still, and that kind of workplace doesn't really exist anymore. And hence people are coming out of it in, you know, very with difficulty. And even in the school system, so many more people are coming through it feeling like this hasn't helped me to understand my own potential and to thrive and understand myself better and where my strengths and my skills can be really used. And so I think there's a huge amount to be done around helping people to get there. Why it
Mm,
happens, I honest, I honestly think, and again, this is the core of why I care so much about this work, is that social conditioning is such a strong force. As soon as we get into the school system, and even as individuals in a family unit, we start to listen to what our parents are telling us and what our teachers are telling us about what is normal and what is right. And those messages, when they go in very young, it's very hard to decondition yourself as an adult or unlearn them, because they're really, they get embedded in your psyche as like a subconscious level. And sometimes I see people really grappling with this cognitive dissonance, basically, of like, I know that this isn't the right way to do it, but every time I act in a different way, I'm faced with this strong physical feeling of anxiety. And I'm like, yes, because somebody in your life way down the line has threatened you with punishment if you didn't behave, or you didn't, like, do what you're told. They'll say that, just do as you're told. Or so just take that one as an example. Like, a lot of kids hear that when they're young, or
Yeah, right.
you need to sit down and be quiet. Right. And then you suddenly get to an adult and you're like, but hang on, now you're telling me that sitting down and being quiet and not doing what I'm told is a good thing, right? It's a good thing. It's what's going to get the disruptors are the ones in the world who are making money. Like, just to be clear, if money is the goal, but the ones who are creating, who are making stuff, who are creating new avenues. And so now people are going, well, oh, that's how I'm supposed to behave. Well, I don't even know how, because no one ever taught me, and I don't feel any safety in that. So the question is, how do you break that? How do you break that conformity that was created so young? And so what does it take to decondition and unlearn, basically? And I think that's the work. And part of that should be fun. Just to add in.
Oh, it needs to be. It needs to
Yeah.
be, because when
Yeah.
you're in that sort of like peak state, there you can make a change. And it's not just like a sort of nerdy fun. It's um it's really a full body fun.
Yeah.
I think I froze for a second.
You did, but all good. And I think that's exactly so. What I've noticed in terms of what it takes over time is not um actually, and this is okay. So this is how most training is done in companies: is we're going to give you a presentation, and you're going to write some notes, and listen. Maybe there's some discussion, and then that's kind of generally speaking how it goes. And I'm not saying that we necessarily do anything super radical that's different to that, but I try to always emphasize that the only way you're really going to change how you behave and make significant difference is if you experience the change. Like you say, it's got to live in your body. So
Yes.
you can't, like, courage only happens when you do something that is scary. Like, that's how you feel what courage feels like. So I think we've got to get more into the experience-based sort of learning, as opposed to cognitive learning, or trying to, and again, that's just a big shift, I think, in education. And
Yeah, because the teachers and the educators aren't trained in this way of seeing things. But I've had the pleasure of talking to lots of people that have been bringing in this kind of work, and I'm always very excited when I find people that are generally passionate and fun about what they're sharing, and you might even know these guys. Just as like the last example, I'm listening to they have the project called the Rebel Finance School, and I've never heard people so passionate about what they're um about money, talking about finances. And they're so funny. They're a couple, and they banter off each other all the time, and like
Mm,
and I'm like, wow, really literally everything can be done with heart and lightheartedness, and a sense of curiosity, wonder, and
yeah.
there's another guy. He actually he's in London, Ivan Pret, and
Mhm.
for a while he was a teacher, and he would like teach history lessons. So he would get them to enact the two sides of battles, and these sort of things stick with you because they're experiential, like you're saying. It's like, how can I? And this is the whole thing about designing workshops and trainings. How can I create this aha moment where
Right.
where I'm drawing out the lesson from people rather than forcing it in? It's like,
Yeah, telling them what they should know, as opposed to letting
yeah,
them understand what they should know. I remember when I started Be More Pirate, I went to work at so Sam used to run a marketing agency in South London, and he would work with lots of young people who'd come in, and he'd help them kickstart their creative careers. and most of the young people were from, what would be considered ethnic minority backgrounds. And I remember the first time I walked in there, because he said, "Oh, you can take a desk at the back and go and work there too." And it was the first time I'd ever walked into a workplace in my life where I had been pretty much the only white, not the only white person in there, but in the minority. And I was like, oh God, this is what it feels like to feel awkward, a bit out of place potentially. Do I really fit in here? Will these people kind of get me? Should they, do they even care about getting me? All these questions that were going through my head, to be honest. Um, and I'd never felt that. And I realized, I was like, that's what privilege is. That's what I've never had to face in a workplace, because I've gone in every time and I've been the default person basically. And I think it was only experiencing it that I really got it, and I got the kind of questions that you might be asking yourself, and what you might want from an experience like that to feel maybe more a greater sense of inclusivity. Not, it's not the same experience, but it was as much of a parallel as I could get, and it's always stayed with me since then.
Mhm. Yeah, this is it. This is an interesting point, and I don't know exactly what you're doing, but um, not get too philosophical about it, but life will throw at us that stuff, so we understand the lesson, you know. And if we grasp it, then that's cool, you know. Um,
Hmm.
if we stay on the outside of it and don't really let ourselves live it or feel it, then we won't get it either. So
And
a lot around the like playful recovery, let's say, is really coming back to our sense of feeling as well. Um, that we're just not used to. I've lived in Italy now 25 years. I was born in London actually, and I grew up in Penzance.
Mhm.
Um, and it's for me, coming to Italy was this learning how people express their emotions more, basically. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
It might be too far the other way, right? So, but I could choose. I can be in the middle, sort of like yeah. So
yeah.
let me ask you a question now. Because we've been talking for a little while now. What is it that you're like you feel is most urgent now with your work? Um,
Mm,
your work, Alex's work, whether it's be more pirate or your own whatever that is.
yeah. Mm. Um, the the area that I find most significant, I think, at the moment, that is the gateway to a bigger rebellion, is something that's coming up with lots of different teams and projects, is just how you have better uncomfortable conversations. Like, I'm so interested in how you have uncomfortable conversations in a way that allows people to build a bridge. I just cannot see any way in which we're going to solve any problems in the world without this.
Yeah, if we beat around the bush, no chance.
Yeah, I think, and the unfortunate thing is I don't often come across people. Um, I mean, it probably speaks to the fact that I work with a lot of people who broadly agree with a lot of the pirate philosophy and ideas, but obviously within the world there are huge differences of opinion now about what it's going to take to um build, I guess, build and improve society, and also like tackle the things like climate change and AI, and like what is the right way to go. And there's huge differences of opinion, and they're so bound up with our identity, and people are clinging to their identities. And even though I might have my own opinions about what's right and what's wrong, increasingly I just think I've got to find a way to let go more of my or or engage in a really serious way with people who I really disagree with, because I don't know how else we're going to make any progress. So I think that's something that for me is huge. But at the
Mm.
same time, I think I'm always on a mission personally I mean, the whole of how we live and particularly work needs to change. So at a personal level, one of the points in my own pirate code is always energy is a more important currency than time. So I try to guide my day based on what helps my energy. And that is also, lots of physical stuff as well as, and even that is still a deconditioning process from like thinking that the way that I would be valuable in the world is by sitting in front of my computer from 9 till 6 every day, banging out whatever kind of work was needed of me so that I could take my salary. I think there's still aspects of that is ingrained in me. And I've started to live and work in such a different way. And I think this might be really basic for you because you've always kind of lived in a freer and more play-based way. But what I see is the majority of people are still trapped in this. And if I can demonstrate to people how to break free and create a life that suits them, then that is good work, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This idea that energy management rather than time management, this shift allows us to do better things with like our pauses. When I was at university, I studied chemistry at university. Right? When I learned to juggle when I was at university, and that blew my mind completely. But I would juggle. I would study 45 minutes and then juggle 15 minutes, and this just reset my mind. This is one of my mottos as well. It's like you're not exhausted because you're doing too much. It's because you're not doing enough. That like you're not spending enough time in your zone of genius. You don't know what's fun for you. You think you know what's fun for you, but you're not doing it. So it doesn't need much. It doesn't need, like, ironically, if we go for a walk like in a park, all we need to do is like just walk around a tree, like take a detour, walk around a tree and carry on, and it puts us in a whole different world. It's like crazy. It's like, how does just doing that tiny little thing there, because otherwise we're just too forward, thinking all the time. We don't. Anyway.
Yeah, I always think like the very first thing you can do with yourself is if someone tells you like an idea, right? Something that seems a bit silly to you, like maybe, yeah. So I remember the first time I met like a shaman who said to me, go and just put your hand on a tree and just talk to the tree, just say something to it. And I just thought, initially I was like, oh, I'm gonna look
Tree
like an idiot.
huggers.
Well, yeah, it's such a tree hugger stereotype. I was like, oh God, this just sounds stupid and just exactly not what I want to do. But I was like, why am I so resistant to trying something silly? Like, how can I advocate curiosity and exploration if I'm not even willing to do this like small thing? And it's also just interesting to notice like that resistance coming up to doing stuff like that. And part of that resistance is also just thinking, I think I notice this a lot, that a small thing won't make a difference.
Like being too in our thinking mode.
Oh yeah. You're analyzing the situation before you even experienced it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think and I was thinking of just what you said about pirate codes and creating them and things. I was running a group last night and I have a code for our group session, and a lot of the points I feel speak to what this conversation. One of them is about using your own compass. Like, not even though I'm running a course for them, what I'm really saying is don't let me dictate to you right or wrong in this. Like, part of the development I want you to go through is understanding.
So how do you go about that without leaving people like feeling lost? Or is like that cool
I
to feel
know.
lost?
Well, I give them structure, as in like we have a structured calls. I give them an exercise to do, but I'm saying as you're going through this exercise,
Okay.
try to feel like almost like what your edge is, like what feels uncomfortable about this for you, if it feels uncomfortable. What's like if you're feeling resistance, what is the resistance? Because sometimes the resistance is, oh, I've never done this before. And that's not, I'm like, that's not good enough. Like, that's just unfamiliarity.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so,
please, you have to give us an example of an exercise, otherwise it's a bit like.
no, I mean, like I do, one of the exercises I do is a thing that I learned from a coaching course I did years ago, which I think is so helpful to me. But because I'm in this group where helping people to get better at speaking. So I say to them, write out a memory of when you've spoken up or given a speech or a presentation or something, and it didn't go well, or you felt feelings of shame or embarrassment, or it's a memory that carries fear and shame. Write it out. And so there's a process. You write it out. You then have to read it out loud to yourself. Then you have to read it out loud really slowly. So you're really focusing on every aspect of this memory. It's horrible.
Oh,
And then you have to read it by taking a huge deep breath in and sighing out in between each sentence. So what you're then doing is creating this pause, and you're trying to regulate your nervous system in between. And it's I find it quite a phenomenal exercise because it does so many things on different levels. But people have resistance to doing it, of course, because they're like, this just feels like, oh, this isn't going to work for me. And I do sense check it. I say, look, if you really are having anxiety today, maybe don't go here, come back to it. But if it's just, I don't want to do this because it sounds a bit difficult, or I think I don't like doing this kind of thing, then maybe it's time to kind of dive into it. So I need them to use their own judgment in order to figure out how useful this would be for them. And you can always pause at any point because it's so yeah, it's a really interesting one. You see all kinds of things come up. You understand how you have constructed a story about that memory, because a memory is just our memory remembers things usually imprecisely. So then you have to
oh, totally, precisely,
yeah,
absolutely. I'm a
yeah,
big fan for inventing our pasts. Sometimes we need to. Sometimes we need to. I was going to share this. I don't know. Sometimes in workshops, I ask people to think of like, like not like an intensely unplayful moment when they're at school, but like something that was like not so pleasant. And it's normally some sort of like very strict teacher somewhere. And I invite them anyway to go into the scene and change some things in the scene and make it humorous. And people will think of like this very strict teacher, I don't know, with like a Rasta hat on and smoking big joints. And this is enough for them to let go. They laugh at this whole thing. It comes into this dissonance in their brains, and they laugh at it all, and it just disappears.
yeah,
The power that teacher had over you.
exactly. And so so actually the last stage of this exercise that I suggest people do is to, once you finish with the breathing, you read out the passage again, but you do it in like a stupid accent.
Ah, yeah.
You take the fear out of it, you make it ridiculous, basically. You just make yourself sound ridiculous. And then you're kind of like, oh, why did I so overblow this one incident? I was like, this one incident is holding you back from so much potential. So you've got to let it go.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. Well, that's cool. I wish you all the best for this, for your speaking project. Excellent. And I am very interested also in this, like, because they use play and playfulness in businesses as buzzwords, and
Mm,
like, what does that really mean? I really enjoyed what you were saying. To be specific, this is in your. But what do you mean by it? Mm, That's like that's one of the things I remember right now about our conversation is this.
yeah. And like I agree, because I think you've got like Lego serious play and stuff. And sometimes that sense of play is imposed upon people as a kind of form of organized fun.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's
Then it doesn't work. You don't actually find this uh, because when you really play, time doesn't exist anymore. Going back to that theme as well.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
one clear indicator. Time doesn't like, oh, 2 hours gone by already. you know.
I think the one thing, just to share this, I did a session before Christmas, and I think this went really well in terms of actual fun. And it's because people get ownership over how to do it. So there's this one icebreaker game I love playing, which is called like direct your own movie. And you give people, I just come up with like I pick some old movie titles from like the 80s, like really bad films that that sank, and and say, here's some movie titles, and I give them a genre, and I say, right, you need to now work together in a team and come up with a pitch for this movie. Like, I want you to just tell me what the plot is, who's going to play the characters, and kind of sell it to me, and then we everybody takes turns to kind of pitch their movie, and it's so funny because they come up. I mean, they come up with such random stuff, and usually the title and the genre are contrasting, so they have to figure that out. But it's just generally it creates it makes people laugh a lot.
Yeah, no, I like these sort of exercises because they're very clear. We don't have to have any hang-ups. Oh God, I have to be creative now. It's quite immediate, and gives somebody a container to be able to express their, yeah, just their joy, the joy of two different things together.
Yeah.
Very good. So, Alex, maybe you have like a finishing word you'd like to share, and then we'll call it off for the session.
Finishing word. I don't know. I think you asked me what I would have as an anthem,
Oh
which I
yeah,
good
that's right.
question. And I that you mentioned earlier, and I like that. And I thought, I mean, I have a whole playlist of pirate anthems
Oh.
with various moods. But the one that I was like, oh, this feels like a playful version of pirates, because yeah, there's different aspects of being more pirate, and play is definitely one. The song that's it's called Feel It Still, and and one of the lines in it is, I'm coming out of left field, I'm a rebel just for kicks now. And I like it because I think what pirates did was they made it seem like they were irreverent in their style, in how they put forward their rebellion, but actually there was a seriousness underneath it. So it was the framing, the story, the let's call it like the wrapping paper was so fun. It was so appealing to people, and I think that's like the biggest thing that's missing often is it's that. I think it was Toast Ale that said it. If you want to change the world, throw a better party than the ones that are destroying it. So, are we throwing a good enough party? That is the question.
Yeah, and a good party is where everybody connects together as well and feels safe.
But
Yeah.
yeah. A party is everything. Connection, community, fun. Um, and of course it can have, a sense of purpose to it if you want it to.
Sure. It can have a theme to it.
Yeah, in How to Be More Pirate, I talk about like the two sort of big pirate parties I tried to throw and how they were different. And the fact that ultimately I couldn't really control the agenda anyway. A party is made by the people that are there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's something that's important. Like that idea of um, you've got to make your rebellion appealing to people, and without losing the purpose and the ethics behind it.
Yeah, no, yeah, you can't just slag things off without
No.
know what the alternative is, like you're saying at the beginning, it all comes
Yeah,
around.
definitely. Um, yeah,
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I'm just going to share this thing because I, this year I'm working a lot more on retreats. I'm not so interested in working in businesses, but
yeah.
I'm more interested in individuals coming and working with me, discovering more play. And I wanted to do something, come back to England, and I'm going to do something in Penzance, where I grew up, and I was thinking, I could be pirate themed, but how much to go into it? I decided to go full on. It's going to be like in costumes, like, and there's a part of me that says like, well, you're risking it's just going to be like a period, but no, it will give people a chance to try on lots of different aspects of it. So I'm quite excited about that. Quite nervous as well, but I
Hmm.
like it. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a cool. I think this is going to be a cool idea. Mhm.
Pirates of Penzance. Yeah, I mean it seems like the obvious choice.
Goes together somehow. And there's some amazing pubs, really old ones with like all sorts of like pirate
Yeah.
features inside.
Yes, and I think when we finally managed to venture out of fully sort of corporate training in 2023, we ran our own, because I'm with you. I would prefer to do increasingly will move towards bringing people together, people who share the same values around this. And we brought together a team within a company who like the idea of being pirate, and we did all the workshops in the pirate pubs in East London, and that changed it. That changed the feeling. So I fully support that. And don't be nervous, it'll be fun. It'll be good. I'm sure.
Brilliant. So anyway, I'll put people can find out about Be More Pirate. Let's just last thing, like if somebody wants to get involved in the Be Pirate movement, what can they do?
Yeah, so there's information on our website, but there's also a meetup group. So if you want to come and just have a chat, learn more about Be More Pirate, think about or get support from our community on challenges that you're facing, or discuss them with a group of people who probably, as I said, share roughly the same thinking, then I host pirate meetups on our meetup group. And the next one is on Friday, the 14th of Feb, midday, UK time. So yeah, drop in if you feel like it, but there's more info about everything we do on the website, how to buy the book, if you want to run a workshop, and just be involved with the community. I'm always really interested in just hearing people's stories as well. So if you feel that you're doing something that is a challenge to the status quo, that is an interesting project, just you can always drop me an email as well, alex@bemorepirate.com.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for listening and watching, and to the next episode.
Bye.